In this tutorial in CyberLink PowerDirector, we'd like to introduce you to the interface of the program. If you're a brand new user, we'd like to have you become more comfortable with the initial screen and how to understand what the three major components are and how they help you create your first video. We'll drill down into the details in a subsequent tutorial. First thing we're going to note is that the PowerDirector screen is built around three different segments. The first segment or panel is in the upper left. That's where all your resources are found. The second segment is the bottom. That's the horizontal segment. That's your timeline. That's where you build your video project from 1 minute to another minute as you go from left to right and create it using sounds and video and effects and other kinds of things. In the upper right corner you have the preview screen. That's where you get to look and see all the things that you're working on. It gives you a visual feedback so you can manipulate the items any way you want. Let's look at the three panels in this exercise. The first panel again is the resource panel, and that's broken up into several different options. Now this panel will be occupied by whatever icon I click on the very left side, and every time I click on something else the panel looks different. It fills with different kinds of information. So let's cover these. There are 2 or 3 that you'll use a lot and several that you may use very seldom. It starts out by giving you the media room. Now you can occupy that panel with the media room by clicking on the icon or just pressing the F3 key anytime you want on your keyboard. Now each of these panels has 2 segments. It has a segment that displays what's in it, and then it has this menu area on the left. Now you can expand or contract that by clicking on the little blue arrow. If I click over here, I don't see it. I have more room to see my content. If I click it again, now I can see it. And in this case, I can look at my media content, which is what you'll see very often, color boards, background music, sound clips, other kinds of things that I might want to use. So this is where I actually have the subcategories of what I find in this room. And again, if I need more room, I just click on the arrow and I can always turn it back on. So that's my media room. You'll spend lots of time putting video and audio into this particular room. The next room down is called your project room. I don't use that a lot, but you might. It contains the last videos that you've worked on. So you can simply click here and begin working on something that you were working on the other day. So that's the project room. The effect room is the third one. This gives you a host of effects that you can apply to clips. And again, you can click on any one of them and you'll get a representation in the preview screen of what it's going to look like. Again, they're categorized, so we can look at different categories of effects and have that subset available to us, or we can click on the left and we can close the window. In some of the panels you have a drop down at the top which basically gives you the same options as the little blue arrow on the left. So don't be confused, it's basically 2 ways to get to the same place. The next item we have is the video overlay room, or the PIP objects. That stands for picture in picture. When I click on that, I see that I have these little animations that I can use. Some of them may relate to titles. Some may relate to other kinds of things that move. And they're basic animations that you can use from one purpose or another, depending on what you have loaded in your personal copy of CyberLink PowerDirector. So these are the subsets. Again, you can look into the subcategories if you desire. The next one we have is the particle room. Now, particle room acts a little bit like a PIP object, but it's somewhat different. If you notice, it's a graphic animation of one kind or another, and they will vary from type to type. Some of them are more cosmetic. Some of them are more functional in terms of here's a rainstorm or a sandstorm, and we can apply these and to overlay them in different kinds of video. So there's all kinds of options that you have here in PIP objects. We'll deal with that in some detail. The next room you'll use a lot, and that's your title room. Here you have the titles that you can apply to CyberLink PowerDirector. And you'll find a title style that works for you, and there are all kinds of ways to adjust and modify titles. Titles are a huge part of what it means to be a video editor, and so we'll spend a lot of time there. Again, we have all kinds of credits for titles. We have all kinds of variations that we can use, and so there's many kinds of titling options available. The title room and the media room are the two I use the most. The next one down is a transition room. This is where you bring in a transition between two different video clips in most cases, although you can use transitions elsewhere. But these give you ways in which you can move from one scene or one clip to another in CyberLink PowerDirector. The next one down is our audio adjustment room. This is where you can adjust the audio gain and level between one clip and another. Now you notice only one of these is lit now. That's because I only have one audio track active right now. That's this piano piece. And if you have many, it gets very complicated, but you can adjust them all so the audio is smooth from the beginning to the end of your project. The next one with the microphone is the F10 key. That's the voiceover. That's where you can create your different audio, like I'm using right now, to add voice on top of any or all of the video and other elements in your project. The next one is a chapter room. This is where you can break up your project into different kinds of chapters, and there are different things you can do with those. I don't use this a lot, but if you produce to DVD, you will use it quite frequently. And this is the subtitle room. This is where you can add subtitles that appear on the screen, and there are different kinds of ways in which these are available to you. And there will be a subtitle track that you see here. It's the second one down when you use this particular option. So that's a survey of the types of resources that you have available to you in this panel on the upper left. So this is where you take the raw components that you build your video project with. Now the bottom area again is the timeline. This is where you take your elements and you add them visually and piece them together or stitch them together from left to right. And you have a playhead where you can move it and you can see at what frame and second you are at in your project. Then you have your preview screen. You have a time code below it. And you have different options as to how to navigate through that screen and make some minor modifications. So that's the initial look at the three major components. Now the other thing to note is you have these dots between these areas, so you can change to some degree the size of the windows up to a minimum size in order to change the real estate. You also, if you have a two-monitor system, can set up your copy of PowerDirector so that the entire preview screen shows up on monitor number 2. But this is a bit of a look at the interface to start with. There are other menus and screens that will pop up over the course of time, and we'll deal with those in other lessons. But remember, either media is on the left, your timeline's on the bottom, and your preview screen's in the upper right. And each work together to help you build your video project.